think the topics we wanted to talk about today, which I'm so excited about, which you just suggested, or it came out, isn't it, from a discussion, Bearing One's Soul. And I know we wanted to start off by talking about what struck us both that's been the news this week, right? Should we kick off there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in Jerusalem, but I'm American, so I've been watching what's going on from afar, and like the images are just, it's hard to believe. I didn't really imagine that, one day I'd be seeing this, and I'm not saying that protests are positive and negative.
For those who don't know, David, and for those people who perhaps may be watching or listen to this later, tell us about what's going on.
Well, there's protests been going on for about 2.5 weeks in response to the death of George Floyd, which I think even in 5-10 years, people are all gonna recall this and know this time.
Right. So this is it, isn't it? That there's been this, and it's taken the world by storm in many ways, isn't it? There's been yet another brutal what's being charged for murder of a black man by a police officer under the most awful circumstances, and it's leaning on his neck, he can't breathe, and it's reignited lots of concerns about racism, police brutality, inequality, isn't it? It's given birth to or highlighted so many issues, isn't it? And I guess this is set against the context of COVID-19. And I guess that, David, what jumps out to me about that is interesting, as you said, that, there's American but living in Jerusalem. It's interesting how the repercussions of this, and it's spurred back up the Black Lives Matter movement in the United States, here in the UK, in Australia, with the indigenous population, so many places that there's been, so many people have been horrified and mobilized and concerned. Yeah, it's been extraordinary times, isn't it? There's been lots of protests. Back over to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we all witnessed was a lynching in 2020, and in a different way. But that's what we witnessed. And I mean, for me, I'm a white male, and so I don't want to pretend to, speak, about things that perhaps, I come from a place of more privilege. And so, but I think one of the things that we can talk about today, because we're both musicians, is to talk about, what's been popping up in terms of music in parallel with a lot of the protests that are happening. And, you mentioned something actually too really interesting about Nina Simone, who maybe you could speak a little bit about who she was, but
I will, and it's so relevant because you were saying it's a modern lynching. Nina Simone is somebody who is known for many people as being an incredible pianist, a songwriter, but particularly prominent in the Black civil rights movement in America in the 60s, Young, Gifted, and Black, Mississippi Goddamn, powerful songs about the human experience. And I played for us just before we started talking this beautiful performance from her. I think it's in like 1976. I think she's playing in somewhere like Montreux, and she's singing a song called Stars. And it's about, I guess, the creative struggle, being a creative, being an artist, fame, and so on. But when you listen to it, you can't but listen to it mindful of, here's somebody who's seen huge inequalities. Here's a woman who wanted to be a classical pianist because a lot of the segregation and so on and inequality, she wasn't able to do that. She was very bold in terms of the civil rights movement, so many people putting themselves at risk, marching peacefully and so on, in the light of so much torture, pain, and brutality and so on. So it's quite extraordinary, isn't it, that many of us, and I grew up, as a kid, I studied, among other things, 20th century history, and we studied civil rights, and I kind of was thinking at the time, thank goodness things have moved forward, and then here we are, where some things have and some things just have not. And I think it's that things that just have not for so many people. But I want to ask, you know, for somebody who's American living now in Jerusalem, how did that reverberate with you before then we go back to then this thing about for us as creatives, because I know you wanted to talk about protest songs, which I guess is the link, isn't it? This thing about protest songs. But what are your feelings being American, but being away from home in one sense?
Well, I mean, it's, I mean, from the images and from what it seems, I mean, in many of the images you see, I mean, it looks like America is burning. It's like, you know, the fall of Roman Empire. And, you know, in some ways, you know, perhaps certain structures, you know, need to fall. Certain hierarchical systems, certain things that have, for example, been keeping systemic racism in place for all of this time. And so, but to see it happening, it's surreal.
And maybe on that note, I just wanted to jump in because you said something powerful. I think one of the things that, you know, speaking as a Black British guy, you know, of African descent, what's been beautiful for many people to see is the, you know, there was that Blackout Tuesday, which was a day where artists around the world, led by Black artists and with solidarity from artists of all backgrounds, were saying, hang on, today we're not going to do business today. You're not going to benefit from us today. And what was incredible, I noticed on Instagram, where all of these artists, you know, from across the spectrum doing that. And for me, the powerful word here has been that solidarity. And then here in the UK, where there's a pulling down of a statue of a slave trader who's been in Bristol, that people have been campaigning about, you know, for years and years and years. And then this crowd has collected this collective choreography. They pull down the statue, and the police, and they deserve some credit for this, where they didn't intervene, because you could see that this whole group realized that this was no longer appropriate. So for me, there are these shoots of hope, and I guess that's what I guess protest music is about, right, David? That protest music is often in these difficult times. And it can be times of, you know, I guess there's lots of protest music in the 60s, through to the folk music. Then in things like the 80s, there was often more charity about more like natural disasters. Lots of these songs, I guess, are songs of hope, songs of mobilization, so songs to evoke justice, songs to evoke change. And I guess as creatives, it's quite powerful that creativity can do something that can turn potentially tragedy and trauma into something that could potentially be transformational. So anything you want to say there about the protest songs? Because I think you've been looking up a couple of protest songs that had resonated with you over the years.
Yeah, well, what I wanted to see was some of the protest songs that have emerged just in the past couple of days.
Right.
I wanted to see how different the lyrics were from protest songs from, you know, maybe 50 years ago. And I think the protest songs, in some ways, they embody and package emotion in a way that sometimes a speech can't. There was, I remember, a historian who described even, say, the music of John Coltrane, who influenced Gil Scott-Heron and a lot of other musicians across different genres in the 60s and 70s, that Coltrane was able to communicate certain things that weren't able to be communicated. This isn't me saying this is what was written about him, like from Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, because there's something within the music that can be expressed without words, sometimes without words. So I thought it actually might be interesting for me to read some of these lyrics.
Please.
In fact, I put you on the spot.
Love it.
To guess, to try to see, you know, tell me which decade you think it's from. Now, some of these I think you're gonna, so I'll give you, they're either from the 70s, 80s, 90s, or somewhere in the 2000, like 2000, 2007, 2020.
Okay.
Actually, no, maybe to give you, all right, it's either 2020 or 1970s.
Okay.
Okay. So some of them you might know
I'm
because
very competitive. So as an artist, I want to even get, I want to try and if I can even guess the song and even the year, or if I can, but we'll see how I do. I may only get the decade if I'm lucky.
okay, so I'm gonna actually some of them I'm gonna remove some of the lyrics so you can't it's
Okay,
not so apparent what
okay,
the
let's
song
go
is.
for it.
Okay, here's one. Okay, no more sleeping in bed, no more backward
I
thinking.
know it.
Time for thinking
Love it. I know it.
ahead.
Wake up, everybody. I'm Harold Melvin in the Blue Notes. And I was thinking about just the other day. Wake up, everybody. No more sleeping in bed. No more backward thinking. Time for thinking ahead. The world has changed so very much from what it used to be. There is so much hatred, war and poverty. That's 70s, and it's so 70s. Beautiful song. Teddy Pendergrass. Yeah. I don't know the year. I would say it's about 19. And Harold Melvin in the Blue Notes, I'd say it's about 1970. Ooh, I'm guessing 4, if I had to guess.
It was a little bit, let me see, was it 70?
You know, I'm competitive. I really want to get it close.
I think it was 75, 74 or 75. So I think you're right on.
Nearly there. Yeah, let's see. So I'm pleased about that one. Yeah, I'm pleased about that one. Beautiful song.
Wow. Wow. And I skipped out on the first lyric, which was "Wake up, everybody." Okay. But yeah, I mean that's another protest song. I mean they were speaking about a lot that was going on.
And what's nice about that one, just to say a quick word about that one, I think what's beautiful about that particular one is that in a way it's a soft protest song. You know, it could be on a very personal level about, okay, do I need to just wake up generally in terms of my life and what I'm doing? But it could also be, hang on, do I wake up socially? And it depends how deeply you listen to the lyric, because it's also beautifully presented. And I think that's one of the powerful things that music can do, isn't it? It doesn't need to, it can subtly shift you and move you to live in a different way and so on. What's the song number 2?
So I'll throw another soft one out there.
Okay.
Don't punish me with brutality. Talk to me.
No, oh yeah, I know it straight away. Yeah. What's going on, Marvin Gaye? What's going on? I mean, maybe that is the protest song of protest songs. What's going on? I think it's 1971.
Yeah, exactly. 71.
1971. That's really powerful, isn't it? And that whole album, you know, and I'm realizing that one can also create work that can be music. You can be very musical. It can be protest, it can be soothing, it can be spiritual all at the same time, and it can shift our consciousness. Yeah, that's a beautiful one.
All right, so I'm going to get harder.
Well, yeah.
Started a war screaming, peace at the same time. All the corruption, injustice, the same crimes. Always a problem if we do or don't. Find in we, nah, we don't have the same rights. What is a gun to a man that surrenders? What's it going to take for someone to defend us? If we all agree that we're equal as people, then why can't we see what is equal? I can't breathe. You're taking my life from me. I can't breathe. Will anyone fight for me? How do we cope?
Then, so I don't know this song yet, but I get the feeling this is from now. This song is from now, right? And I know there've been a number of protest songs. Is this a song? Is this a song that by chance has got "Will I Am" in it? I don't know, but so I don't know.
No.
This one is 2020, right?
Yeah, it's 2020. I'll finish the second verse, which
Yeah.
is, how do we cope when we don't love each other? So that's something also echoing Marvin Gaye's lyrics. Where is the hope and the empathy? How do we judge off the color? The structure was made to us. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. The structure us the enemy. Praying for change, cause the pain, makes you tender. All of the names you refuse to remember were somebody's brother or friend, son to her that's crying. See? I can't breathe. You're taking my life from me. I can't breathe. Will anyone fight for me?
Powerful. And
so it's actually hasn't been released yet. So you didn't have a chance. I'm sorry.
Wow.
It's by her, her.e.r. And she just came out with this a couple of days ago and did it on an iHeart concert. And in response to what's been going on.
Right. For those people who don't
really,
know, so in June 2020, so this is really interesting. It's beautiful. It's very poignant to now, isn't it? Very to now and
yeah. And I'll do one more.
Yeah, let's do one more.
Okay. You will not be able to stay home, brother. You will not be able to plug in, turn on, and cop out.
This is Gil Scott-Heron, right? Is this Gil Scott? Yeah. Is this the revolution will not be televised?
That's exactly it.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful. And that's very, you tell us a little bit about.
I was just going to say, Rasheed, can you confirm that I didn't send you these beforehand?
I can confirm.
Tell you that I was going to do this.
But the thing is that one of the things I love a good pop quiz, and but I must say that my strong points tend to be musically from the 60s probably to about the 90s, and then probably a bit kind of weaker. But these are really powerful. And the other one that jumped into my mind. The other one that was really, really jumping into my mind a lot was, let me give you one. Brothers and sisters, when they insist we're just not good enough, but when you know better, look them in the eyes and say, I'm going to do it anyway. 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 Something inside so strong, Labi Sifri. So this is from the 80s, and this is, the anti-apartheid movement. Something inside so strong, I know that I can make it, but you're doing me wrong, so wrong. You thought that my pride was gone, oh no. And I remember hearing this as a kid, and this song moved me. I was like, this song isn't exactly an example of what it's talking about. Something inside so strong. It literally, I think that this song, and a number, there's a number of songs there about the anti-apartheid, songs like Give Me Hope, Joanna by Eddie Grant, there's songs, Free Nelson Mandela, Special, a whole tranche of songs to shift consciousness, and the songs there were really played a significant part in changing public attitudes, changing things, and eventually, changing the system, at least for a while. And then, we saw the release of Mandela, and we saw the change of the system, and so on. So it's very powerful what protest songs can do, what they can ignite. And we were talking about this before. They can turn often just anger away. Anger, if harnessed and used wisely and mindfully, can be turned into something which can be positive to change things and mobilize people to change things positively and hopefully non-violently. What's interesting, that what music can do is provide also a kind of way of healing, comfort, strength, camaraderie, which is very, very, very powerful. And let's face it, all of this at the moment, isn't it? It's set against the backdrop of COVID-19, where lots of people have been turning to music generally, or sharing music, or in all sorts of ways, for choirs singing together, through to people changing lyrics of songs, for comfort, and to use humor as a balm, as a healing, and so on. So it's been quite a powerful time, and it's set against, though, a time which for artists has been often tough, isn't it? As live, as lots of performance and lots of things for performance have been tough. So it's beautiful to see how we've turned to music again, and how music helps us to turn to ourselves. And also, crucially, David, for me, how music connects us. So it moves it from my pain and my experience to us as a collective, something that's shared about, particularly a protest song. It's not just me. Suddenly it's a collective, and it's inviting us as a whole to look at ourselves, to wake up, everybody.
Yeah, I like that. Wake up, everybody.
Any last words that we should say before we wrap up our conversation today?
Just, it's, on the one hand, I keep thinking about time, and time in the sense of we're hearing the same thing, and in some ways it's discouraging, right? That we're facing the same systemic racism in 2020 as in 1970, and I'm thinking well, what would, you know, Marvin Gaye be thinking, or what would Nina Simone be thinking watching all of this happening? And I don't know. I mean, how would they be reacting? What would they be singing about? And I'm also thinking of, you know, there's also probably people who might be like watching this, or who are thinking about music, and they're like, music, it's not the time for music. And I could absolutely like hear that as well, almost hearing like Ecclesiastes, like there's a time for love, there's a time for war, like sadness, and there's a time for everything. And I wonder, like you said, with music and healing,
Mm.
you know, maybe now is not the time yet for the healing. Maybe that's something that comes later. You know, maybe now is the time for, you know, music to.
But I think there's something about that, you know, David, that's powerful. That many people's darkest hour, the music goes hand in hand with both the hurt and the healing, are almost, and the sustenance. They all go hand in hand. You know, very often it happens, you know, that we're singing in that choir. We're singing even in the face of, you know, our final moments. You know, singing it at the moment from birth right till the last breath, that we're singing, that we're making music, that we're playing, or that there's hope. So for me, I think for us as artists, now is the time, you know, because there's something that, and we can all do it. You know, it makes me think about the wonderful project that you've been working on, the One World, One Song, which to me speaks so much about that, about the role that music can just play for us all, to bring us all together individually, collectively, and so on. So I think it's there throughout. It's just there throughout, isn't it? And it's in our hearts. And sometimes when we have nothing else, sometimes when there's nothing else that we can do, then it's so extraordinary when somebody will find themselves singing. It might be a prayer, it might be a hymn, it might be a mantra, it might well be a, you know, it could be a piece of music to just escape. That music is there, or banging on a drum, picking up the guitar, playing the piano, reaching for our favorite thing that gives us comfort in some way. And maybe it's about us really applauding all those people, past and present, who are doing that and creating music, and creating music from the heart and from the soul, and not just for one, but for all. For me, that's the part music can play. Well, thank you so much as always, and it's always a joy having these conversations. And thanks for everyone for listening to us. And we'll be back again soon to share with you again.